So in this video, we're going to be talking about the Roman wars in the East, and there's an extent to which this goes a lot faster, and in some ways, it's a lot less epic than Rome's conflict with Carthage and the story, even of its rising up to take dominion over Italy. The East that Rome begins to engage itself in after the Second Punic War, and so there's sort of a dividing line right around 200. That's relatively convenient. This is the Hellenistic East. This is the East that has been sort of connected together by the conquest of Alexander and the creation of a Hellenistic world, and so the all of these lands are ruled over by Hellenistic monarchs, either by descendants of the Macedonian generals, or by rulers that have been thoroughly absorbed into the Hellenistic way of doing things, this Greekified East. And so to a certain extent, this means that Rome, when it turns to the East, is not confronted by lots of different cultures, lots of different separate relationships. Rome steps into an East that is already very powerfully connected together culturally, and in terms of things like commerce and trade. The cosmopolitan nature of the East means that there's a great deal of interaction between these Hellenistic peoples. Rome has there's a number of reasons for Rome turning to the East. A lot of these have to do with commerce, expanding its opportunities. This is where all the civilization is. This is where a great deal of the creation of all the kinds of goods that are used throughout the Mediterranean world, and ancient practices for the creation of the finest of products, whether we're talking about ceramics or textiles or metalworking. The East is the industrial center as well as the cultural center of the world. Rome is on the outlier, and so for Rome to establish itself, it's naturally going to gravitate into the markets, the cities. It's going to wade into the commerce, and therefore necessarily the culture of the East. The attraction of the East also of being an older and greater set of civilizations. The Romans are fiercely proud of themselves, and are fighting to, as I said before, to stand tall, against all of these places that are older and wealthier, and they can put them down by saying that they're decadent, and that that their virtue is corroded by luxury. But the fact is that the Greek world of the East is what it means to be civilized, and for Rome to be anything other than a barbarian, it must acquire a measure of Greekness, and so it becomes increasingly important for education in Rome to include knowledge of Greek. Partly this is a practical matter of being able to engage in trade with Greek Easterners and the Greeks of southern Italy, and also to exhibit a Rome that can stand without shame alongside the peoples from these older, more ancient cities. And so Rome also is drawn into the conflicts of the East, in part because the Easterners occasionally involve themselves in the West. The Greeks of the East have vested interest in in what is happening in southern Italy and in the Greek colonies of the Western Mediterranean. There is also an awareness, as elsewhere, continually, that Rome is rising so fast that that it is suddenly worth keeping an eye on, to the point where the king of Macedon allies himself with Hannibal in order to have a hand in what looks like Hannibal's very real chance at stopping the juggernaut of Rome. And so, even in the midst of its life or death struggle with Hannibal, Rome sends armies to Macedon and defeats the Macedonians in a war in the east before the struggle with Hannibal is even decided. And so, this sort of begins, Rome's, military investment in the East, which is partly, the extent to which the Easterners get involved in the West, but even more so, the need to back up the Roman presence and the increasing Roman, economic interest in the East, with Roman political presence and military might as necessary. For a large part, though, Roman strength is used diplomatically as an arbiter between the increasing conflicts between the Hellenistic powers, and so Rome becomes a party to peace treaties and a settler of disagreements, and the chief Roman means of insinuating itself into Eastern affairs is arrangements of alliance, the bestowing of the title of friend and ally of Rome onto various nations and kingdoms in the Eastern world. And so Rome becomes a part of what these friends and allies become engaged in, and Rome is more and more present in every relationship, every divide, every conflict. Rome is there in the middle of it, and increasingly the peoples of the East are aware that the Romans have inserted themselves into every city, corner, and problem of the Eastern world. The Romans present themselves as enemies not of the ordinary peoples of the East, but of oppressive Eastern empires. And so the succession of wars that Rome undertakes in the East are very carefully directed only against the great powers that Rome presents as oppressive to the freedoms of ordinary people. And so the first of these is to cut down to size the greatest of the Macedonian kingdoms, the greatest of the Hellenistic empires, the Seleucids, that controlled most of Persia and Syria. The defeat of the Seleucid Empire goes a long way to beginning to end the power of the Seleucids. This is brought to a head in a very evocative moment, a story that is often told throughout the Eastern world, when the Assyrian king, despite having been belittled and humiliated, in the previous generation, at Magnesia, the Syrians make an effort to recover and to restore their previous strength by trying to take Egypt. And it's not in anyone's interest for Syria, the Seleucids to rise again by taking over another Eastern empire. And so, but the Romans, instead of sending a legion to try to fight against Antiochus, they send a delegation of Roman senators. And the the senators meet with the Seleucid king Antiochus in his camp as he's about to enter Egyptian territory, and 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 holds a debate with him over whether it is appropriate, whether it is wise for Antiochus to proceed against Egypt. And then the leader of the Roman delegation, standing there in his toga, stands before this king in all of his armor and standing at the head of all of his troops, and draws a line in the sand around Antiochus and says, if you step beyond this land, if you step over this line, you will become the enemy of the Romans, and the Romans will destroy you. And Antiochus decides to take counsel in the wake of this, and within a week he has turned his back on Egypt and marched back to Syria. This is essentially the end of any kind of threat of potency from from the Seleucid Empire. And in the same year, this is reinforced by the Battle of Pydna, in which the Roman legions defeat Macedon and carve it into pieces, which become Roman provinces. And so between the majesty of a single Roman senator standing there in his toga and sandals, on the one hand, and the awesome might of the Roman legion, many peoples choose not to even resist the encroachment of the Romans, feeling that that they may well be better off under Roman protection, under being integrated into the immense economic success of the Roman Empire, rather than risk being destroyed by the unstoppable Roman legions. And this comes to a turning point in 146 when Rome destroys the ancient city of Corinth. For the Achaean League having resisted Roman rights that had been negotiated through treaty in Greece itself. This one act of absolute demonstration of power is all that is necessary to show to the Hellenistic East exactly what Rome is capable of. It comes in the same year that in the west, at the other side of the Mediterranean, Carthage is also destroyed in 146. And so, it's only over the course of just over 50 years, in the at the end of the Hannibalic War, there was a very real prospect of Rome being utterly defeated by its greatest enemy, Carthage, and yet 55 years later, Rome has essentially sealed its direct or indirect dominion over almost the entire Mediterranean world. Only Egypt itself, because of its great resources, is able to hold out in isolation. But Egypt never poses a threat of any real concern to the Romans during this period. And so, Rome comes into Greece presenting itself as the liberator, presenting itself as freeing the Greeks from the oppression of these great despotic empires, the Macedonians and the Seleucids and so forth. But they're also capable of being the destroyer. If Roman friendship is spurned, and these are the prongs that on which the Hellenistic East is hung, and the thing about this is that there's enough awareness of the benefits that come from being part of the Roman Empire to make being conquered and dominated by them, to a certain extent palatable. Certainly, the alternative of facing the Roman legion and all that entails is enough to seal the fate of the Eastern Mediterranean world, while at the same time the process that results from this is interchange. In other words, the Hellenization that had begun amongst the Romans even before the Romans gained control of the Greek world only intensifies. The Greeks, the Romans have a very conflicted attitude about the Greeks. On the one hand, they look down on the actual Greeks themselves as having been corrupted and weakened from the greatness that they had once had in the days of the classical world. But on the other hand, they immensely admire what Greek culture is capable of in artistic expression. And in philosophy, in practical applications of philosophy, like political science, the works of Aristotle, medicine, engineering, and so forth. The joke is that the Romans hate the Greeks, but love Greek things, and so this is one of the ways in which the Greek world comes to be, sort of a co-founder of Western civilization. That, we talk about the Greco-Roman world. The Romans conquer and gain dominion over the Greek world, the Hellenistic East, but they also absorb everything about it. And in a sense, there is a synthesis going on that's and there's an extent to which the Romans are aware of this, and some of them greet it with a certain amount of pride. That all that is great about the Roman character, melded with all that is possible with the capacity of Greek expression, would truly synthesize the ultimate culture. And so this would create the greatest possible Rome, adapting to what the East has to offer, yet retaining a fierce loyalty to the Roman identity itself. And so this is the Rome that results from the acquisition of empire, and the Roman Empire that comes into play in later centuries is the product of the Roman West and all of its frontier barbarism melding with the ancient cultures of the East and the extreme cultivation of Greek civilization, and how that all turns out we'll continue to explore in the coming videos. For now, that's that.